One of my favorites. Give me the beat, boy. Hi, I'm going under the name Slick Riddles today with a kind of TED Talk, but slicker, fancier. It's called How the Blues Harp Dissolved a Good Catholic Upbringing. So, of course, the first step is to establish that I had a good Catholic upbringing, which is not too difficult because it happened. I was born September 1st, 1953, which means my birthday's coming up. If any of you are wondering what to get me, a Marine Band harmonica in any key would be great. There's a place called Woodwinds and Brasswinds. They're online. They have the best prices. I was baptized into the Catholic Church on September 13th, 1953. At St. Rosalima Church in Brooklyn. And incidentally, St. Rosalima was the first person born in the Western Hemisphere who was canonized and became a saint. You don't know much about religion at that age, but a strange thing happened when I was 3 years old. I have an older brother, and he was being confirmed, which means the bishop was coming around. And 3 years old, you don't know much about it, but he's got a very fancy hat. He's got a staff or a crook that he's carrying. And as he's leaving the church after the confirmation, he stopped by my mother and me at the back of the church, and he said something like, "What a cute little hamburger," or something like that. It's weird because I think I have a memory of it, but my mother also told the story so many times that it might be that. But a bishop is pretty impressive. I might have a memory of it. But anyway, my mother decided that hamburger was code for this one's going to be a priest. You know? I don't know how she figured that out, but I think it's called exegesis. Started Catholic school in 1959. In the second grade, you make your first confession and your first communion. Your first confession is pretty weird because you're like 7 years old. You don't know what half of the commandments even mean. Nobody ever explained adultery to me. The nuns could not explain adultery. They couldn't explain coveting your neighbor's wife, what the hell that meant. And I was a good kid, so I didn't have very many sins. So right from the get-go, I lied to the priest about the bad things that I had done, which was a bad thing, you know? But I never confessed to that. But anyway, once you make your communion, you're eligible to become an altar boy. And it's like 1961. They're still using Latin. So I became an altar boy, and for 2 years we were doing the Latin responses. They're kind of burned into my mind. And then they switched to English, so I sort of learned what they were, what they meant. Agnus Dei qui tollit peccata mundi miserere nobis, Kyrie eleison, Pater noster quies in celis, confiteor Deo omnipotenti, Beata Maria sempre Virgini. I could still do them. My favorite was the beginning of the Mass. Intro ibo ad altare Dei, and the response from the altar boy is, Ad Deum qui laetificat juventutem meum, which means we go to the altar of God, and the response is, the God who brought joy to our youth. So, it was fun mumbling Latin when you didn't really know what it meant. But in October of 1962, I got a letter. My mother got a letter from Father McLaughlin, who's in charge of the altar boys. And it said that Father Hughes, the pastor of the church, had chosen me and 2 other boys to serve his 6:30 Mass a week at a time. So I would do every third week. And in the letter, he mentioned that Father Hughes had commented on my beautiful Latin pronunciation. I still have the letter. I know my mother was thinking, well, gee, what profession requires beautiful Latin pronunciation in 1962? Well, sure, a high school Latin teacher, maybe. But really, this one's going to be a priest or a hamburger, something like that. I loved being an altar boy. It was a lot of fun. You got to play with incense and candles and wax and stuff. And I was doing good. I was memorizing the catechism. I developed a very fast Hail Mary. Hail Mary, full of grace, Lord is with thee, blessed art thou amongst women, blessed fruit of Jesus, Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us now at the hour of death. Amen. I can say a pretty quick rosary. And things are going along like that. I'm still in Catholic school. And then one day in, I think it was 1965, I didn't mark these things down at all. But my brother had brought home, one of my brothers had brought home a nylon string guitar, a folk guitar, or a classical guitar. And I went in and got it out from under the bed, got a hold of the Peter, Paul, and Mary songbook, which had little block diagrams for the chords. And I taught myself 3 chords. C, D minor, and G. F would come much later. F is this one. Those guys just did House of the Rising Sun. You couldn't do House of the Rising Sun until you had an F chord. And so it was a while for me.